Yes, I am well aware that this video is about 3 months too late, but that is how you know that I'm a great YouTuber. Anyway, I finally got around to watching the absolute blast that is Squid Game, and have been delving into all the teeny tiny details ever since to get a grasp of where the story might be headed next. So today, I wanted to look at what I believe to be the most probable theories for Season 2, and perhaps even onward. Theory numero uno is a pretty straightforward one. Gi-hun becoming one of the Pink Soldiers. When we see the footage of all the participants meeting the recruiter and playing the initial game where they have to flip the card over, each and every one of them pick the blue card, including Gi-hun. Well, this theory states that if you were to pick the red one, instead of becoming one of the players, you'd be one of the soldiers. And there are actually several facts to support this theory. First off, throughout the series, all the soldiers we see appear to be completely random. There are younger people, there are older people, there are even some who exploit the games themselves with the whole organ side hustle, etc. In many ways, they are treated very similar to the players themselves. Their rooms are completely blank, and their one and only objective is to carry out the tasks set out to them by the frontman. So it's not like they're living in any sort of luxury either. Secondly, and this will also lead into a bit of a different perspective on the same theory, is that both the red card, as well as Gi-hun dyeing his hair red in the season finale, is actually a reference to the Matrix, where the two pills symbolize different states of mind. The blue pill, or the blue card, symbolizes a beautiful prison of ignorance. That is to say, he played the game, and now that he got out alive, he continues living in ignorance of the brutality that happened there. He would spend the rest of his life trying to find comfort in giving the money away to the people affected, etc., but never returning to the games himself in any capacity. Whereas the red pill represents breaking free and fighting for an uncertain future and all the troubles that entails. So by picking the red card, Gi-hun would become one of the soldiers actively monitoring the games, all the while trying to dismantle the organization from within. Though, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but even though this theory is very common, I might have lied just a few seconds ago, because when we see the participants playing the initial game, we do in fact see a few that have chosen the red card. And on top of that, the director of the show has straight up said that the viewers have come up with something even more creative than him, and that the cards do not symbolize that. However, despite that, you could still supposedly argue that when the guards speak about the game, they say that every person in this room is in financial ruin. And notice how they do not say player, but person. So might they just be including themselves in both the videos as well as this sentence? Probably not, but who knows. Though as I mentioned, the whole color theory part also takes a bit of a different perspective that does not involve the cards in any way. This spin on the theory goes that Gi-hun dyeing his hair simply symbolizes the red pill, or in other words, his drive to go against the games. So just like Jun-ho, he would infiltrate the compound, appear as one of the soldiers, and slowly but surely move up the chain of command. This would also tie in with a different theory stating that since we never actually saw Jun-ho's death, he may still be alive, and as such, with the two of them having both the perspective of the participants as well as of the guards, they may be able to stop the games together. Though this does admittedly bring up many questions as to how exactly this thing has never happened before. We know for a fact that there have been many games already, not to mention the international aspect of it, which more on that later, so it does seem a little unlikely that none of the participants would have ever attempted to stop them. Theory numero 2 might just be my favorite one, because if you ask me, it makes complete sense. And that is that the players who vote to leave but don't return become the Pink Soldiers. The idea here is that even after a single game, many people's psyche will have already been damaged beyond repair. So these people may vote to leave the game, but unlike what we saw in the show, never return as players. Instead, they try to live out their lives while still in severe debt until they are once again contacted to return as guards and get payment in return. thereby covering up both the potential loose ends of people on the outside knowing about the games, as well as recruiting people who are already pretty desensitized about the whole thing. On top of that, since they would have already done extensive research on the players, persuading them with this new position with payment in return would arguably be not too difficult. This is also somewhat reinforced by the Pink Soldiers continuing to do shady things in an attempt to get money. So perhaps we could get some insights into how snitching on their own fellow guards may get them promoted to higher ranks, etc. I just feel like there's a ton there that still has not been explored. Though the only problem here, and that may just be down to the small sample, is that none of the guards we see are women, which wouldn't make too much sense since there are plenty of female players. Though again, that might just be down to us seeing a mere handful of guards unmasked. On to theory numero 3. Gi-hun becomes the next frontman. This theory stems from the reveal that happens during Jun-Ho's investigation. We of course find out that the highly mysterious frontman is actually his long-lost brother In-ho, but we also find out that In-ho was the winner of the 2015 competition. The show doesn't spend any time explaining how he went from winning to becoming the frontman, but the answer may hide in the season finale. We see that Gi-hun is contacted by Il-nam, where he sort of explains why the games happened. So the idea here is that this is what happened to In-ho, and it may have been this interaction that made him a loyal subordinate. But now that the founder is dead, In-ho can either step back from the games or assume the founder position, leaving the frontman chair empty. And so, Gi-hun would fill this position and, once again, dismantle the organization from within. Though a different spin on this theory more so relies on the surprise factor of revealing Gi-hun as the frontman. Picture this. A time skip happens, and it appears as if we are following a completely different series of games. That is, until we see that Sabyok's little brother, in an attempt to find out what happened to his sister and where the money came from, has ended up in the games as well. At the sight of this, the reveal would happen, showing us that Gi-hun is the new frontman, and has been working there for many years, during which he has been gathering intel on the rich VIPs, etc. So now, in an attempt to save her brother, his plan has to be put into motion to try and stop the games. The only problem with both the frontman and the Pink Soldier theory is how might Gi-hun get back into the games, let alone become the frontman, if the recruiters already know that he is up to no good. Though, on the contrary, it's clear that Il-nam had some sort of plan for Gi-hun. Throughout the entire game, he was protected, but when it comes to the marble game where either he or Gi-hun has to die, he chooses to bail out, saving Gi-hun specifically in the process. Though yes, that too can be explained by the fact that he couldn't have left sneakily in any of the following games, but I think there is still something there. Theory numero 4 is that the season would be a prequel to the frontman and his game back in 2015. This would actually answer several important questions. Firstly, we would get to see how the previous games were conducted and if there was always been a frontman or not. This is a question that is actually quite a bit trickier than it seems, as when the VIPs arrive, it sounds like it's usually the founder that attends the final viewing. However, even small details such as the question of whether even Il-nam can speak English and communicate with the VIPs, most of whom appear to be English speaking, do start to complicate the matter. On top of that, despite being out of the game already, he still does not attend the final viewing. So the question arises of, are these actual story implications, something like him not wanting the VIPs to know he was a player, or is it simply not to reveal Il-nam as the host to us as the viewer? So yes, it would most certainly give us a little more insights into how important the frontman really is. Though secondly, we might get an insight into why, instead of enjoying his massive winnings, In-ho returned to the game. And on top of that, why was he chosen out of all of the other winners? As of right now, the only real evidence we can gather here is that 1. Yes, he is a winner, And perhaps he is the frontman only in the Korean games since he himself is Korean. There's an entire other theory about this, but in short, once the VIPs arrive, we hear them chatting that the best edition of the games were in Korea, obviously implying that they are held internationally, as well as the fact that they are not always the same. But that's not entirely important. The idea right now is that Inho oversees the games just because they are local, but again, we don't really have anything to go off of. Neither why he is the frontman, why he doesn't enjoy his winnings, how he came back to the games, how he even knows Ilnam, etc, etc. Though with all that said, there are a couple more pretty common theories that I honestly don't think we'll get to see much of. First and foremost, it's the aforementioned international games. This one mostly comes down to it honestly just not making too much sense for any of the characters we know, as well as things outside of the narrative. This is the first Korean show to absolutely blow up internationally, so making it more Western just doesn't make sense for anyone. I think if we were to explore the idea of these games abroad, it wouldn't be much more than a flashback type sequence or something like that, just to show the reach of this organization. I honestly don't expect anything more than that. The second one though is a bit more tricky, and that is the idea of us seeing the very first contest. And the reason why I say it's tricky is because I'm honestly almost certain that we will hear more about it. I'd go as far as to say that I wouldn't even be surprised if we get an entire flashback episode explaining how the games came to be. I'm even willing to bet on the title it's probably going to be like The Founder or The Host. There's simply too much interesting story there for it to be untapped. Though at the same time, I do feel like an entire season might be too much, considering that the only common character would be Ilnam, who would likely have to be recast anyway to account for the difference in age. Though aside from that, I think it would be absolutely fascinating seeing how they dealt with various issues early on. By the time Gi-hun ends up in the games, they are running like a well-oiled machine, which most likely was not always the case. The third one is a super viral one and is all about Ilnam actually being Gi-hun's father. Honestly, this is one that I am still kind of torn on. Yes, there are multiple things that do seem sus enough to make you think that they may lead somewhere, such as the commonalities between their lives, the fact that Gi-hun's birthday coincides with Ilnam's supposed son's birthday, among a couple of other things. Though at the same time, I can't help but think that the stories they share are merely to develop their relationship, and the rest are simply coincidences. Oh, and by the way, I know they share a family name, but it's as common in Korea as seeing Smith in the US. In fact, there's another player in the same games that also shares the family name, and I doubt that they are related. And the very last one is one that I am completely against. And that is that either Ali, Sabyok, or both are alive. And full transparency here, Sabyok ended up being my favorite character in the series, but I still believe that if her death were to be retconned, it would seriously detract from the series moving forward. Ditto for Ali, the whole tragedy of his death was because of Sang-woo's betrayal. And again, if he were to actually survive it, I think it goes against everything the show was about. Especially in the case of Ali, where much of the impact comes from us knowing just how honest he is, only for him to be stabbed in the back. So yes, as much as I love the characters, I do not want them to return outside of a flashback or something along those lines. I just think it would damage the integrity of the show, and would just start this ridiculous game of whenever you see someone die, just immediately asking, wait, maybe they survived. But yes, those are just some of the theories about what direction Season 2 may take, as well as some that I think are far more unlikely. But I know you will have many others to share, so feel free to drop those in the comments. Getting into all the teeny tiny details of the series has been an absolute blast so far, so I am all ears. Though personally, judging by Season 1, I think I'll be satisfied with pretty much any direction they decide to go, as the writing is really nothing short of excellent. In terms of characters, I think these are the most human characters that I've seen in a long time. But yes, here's to hoping that production goes smoothly and we will have a new season sometime late 2022. And that's the video. This is one I certainly knew I'd be making as soon as I finished the season because, oh boy, was it a wild ride. And again, do share any and all of your favorite theories below. I'd love to hear some of your takes on the direction of the show. Other than that, as usual, I want to say a massive thank you to our current patrons who allow me to produce even more of these for you all. Speaking of which, let us give a warm welcomes to the newest member of the team, Sixa. Seriously, thank you. And if you wish to join the highly coveted Mystery Shack Insiders Club, you can do so for as little as $1 buckaroo per month. Other than that, if you enjoyed the video, please share it and click all the YouTube buttons. But now, I want to say thank you very much for watching, I hope you have a great day, and hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!